What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. And today we're talking the latest episode of WWE Chronicle on Kevin Owens. Now, this went up on Saturday, of course, before the TLC pay-per-view on Sunday, promoting his TLC Universal Championship match against the Universal Champion himself, Roman Reigns, which ended up being a great match. I actually only just watched this today, so I didn't have a chance to watch it before the pay-per-view, but it was very, very good. These Chronicles are always great, and they've done so many of them over the last 2.5 years or so on pretty much every top star in the company. They did one on Lana last month that I wasn't really sure what to expect from it because I'm not the biggest Lana fan, but I talked about how that was a great special, and it made you want to root for Lana, even though I don't care about the whole Asuka, Nia Jax, Lana, Shayna Baszler storyline as a person. It made me want to like her more than it did previously. It was a really, really well done documentary. And this was too. I've always been a big KO fan. Anything that he's involved in is always guaranteed to be great. This was no exception. The first thing that we see on the documentary is from December 10th. Now, I'll talk about in a second how it takes place from November 27th through December 11th. But one of the last clips that they get with him, that they actually aired at the beginning of the special, is where he talks about how everyone knew when he came to WWE that family was the center of who he is as a person, and they show him dropping off his daughter. Really cool scene to kind of set the tone for the documentary and show how much of a family man Kevin Owens is. And a lot of people who know Kevin Owens probably are already aware of that, are familiar with the fact that he is a family guy, but this is more evident than ever before. It's more evident and apparent than ever before than it is in this documentary. And the timing couldn't be better, obviously, going into the TLC match at the TLC pay-per-view with Roman Reigns. So like I said, it takes place from November 27th through December 11th, right before the TLC pay-per-view, which took place yesterday as I record this. So he talks about how having his family support means everything to him. And he wants to provide for his family to give them everything that they want, because they've always stood by him, whether it be his wife, his 2 kids, Owen, and his daughter, whose name escapes me right now. But he has a son named Owen, a daughter. We don't see a lot of Owen on this episode. We see a lot of the daughter, though, and obviously his parents as well. So they show him viciously attacking Jey Uso on the November 27th episode of SmackDown. And that's when we kind of go back a bit to where wrestling. This isn't a full-on documentary on Kevin Owens. If you want more on that story, you can watch his documentary from a few years ago, which was great, which I think was called Fight Owens Fight, though I don't remember 100%. But he talks about how wrestling has been ingrained in him since he was the age of 11, since he was 11 years old. It all started with WrestleMania 11, and how whenever he got that tape and saw WrestleMania 11, which was a notoriously terrible WrestleMania, but if WrestleMania 11 is enough to get you into pro wrestling, that's how you know that you're a diehard fan. And wrestling consumed him, he said, until he met his wife at the age of 22. Not that it didn't consume him anymore, but he realized at that point, oh shit, there's more to life than just wrestling. And she, obviously he says that she changed his entire outlook on life. They had their son, Owen. He was born. And growing up, he never thought he would get married. He never thought he would have kids before he met his wife. And then he did meet her, and then he did get married. He did have kids, and family took that top spot for him. That became his top priority. But wrestling, he loves it so much that it can never just be a job for him. So we fast forward to December 4th, and he talks about how the last 3 years for him have been an uphill struggle. And now it's tough in WWE to remain relevant because there's so much talent on the shows, and there's so many spots where it can be tough to maintain momentum and remain relevant over a long period of time. So that's why he's pumped for this opportunity at TLC to prove to everyone why he belongs there, why he belongs in that top spot, in that Universal Championship role. And we see him backstage with, I forgot his name, but Sasha Banks' husband, the seamstress for WWE. That's what they call them, right? The seamstress, the guy who makes the gear and stuff for the company, for the wrestlers. So he's talking to him, and again, his name escapes me. I forgot what his name was. But he's talking with him, and how he mentions to Sasha's husband how that he's saving a certain gear, a certain pair of tights, for when he does become champion again. Because, I don't know if it was on the tights itself or on, the knee pads, I think. He doesn't wear, tights or trunks. He wears, shorts. I think it was on the knee pads. But it said KO, and then over it was, the look. It was, the design of the Universal Championship. And I don't know if he wore them during his last Universal Championship run, or he didn't have a chance to. I don't remember. but he's saving it for his next title run, which will hopefully come at TLC, which of course we know now that it didn't. But when the producer asks him, does it matter to you to be champion again? And he says, it does. He says, it does matter to me to be champion again, because that initial reign as Universal Champion from 2016 and 2017, I didn't enjoy it, he says, as much as I should have. I always thought, what could have been different? What could I have done better? And by the time that I finally started to enjoy it or really stop worrying about that stuff, before I knew it, the reign was over. And it really took him a while to realize, wow, I enjoyed none of that time. I enjoyed none of that reign as Universal Champion. Because all he ever obsessed over was making it great, which is a good thing to be concerned with, obviously. But it took over him. It really, took over his entire mind and heart, soul, whatever, to the point where he enjoyed none of that Universal Championship run. In addition to the fact that it wasn't really booked properly, it wasn't terrible. But the guy was always an afterthought on Raw, lost way more often than he should have. Obviously, that's not really his fault. But he said that he couldn't keep things in perspective at that point, and he can't help but care too much. But at the end of the day, being a champion is important to him. So they show him getting beat up again by Roman Reigns on SmackDown. And he says that what keeps him motivated is that everything that he's doing now, whether it's debuting in a segment with John Cena or winning this championship or going to WrestleMania, blah, 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 was once a fantasy for him as an 11-year-old kid. So being able to accomplish all those things is not lost on him, and that's part of his motivation. So we mentioned quickly, and this really has nothing to do with TLC, and they probably, I know for a fact actually, they included this clip in the 24 on WrestleMania 36 and the fact that it was in an empty building, blah, blah, blah. The initial plan going into WrestleMania 36 at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, not that it was a plan, but his initial hope was to jump off the pirate ship on that show, because I guess there was a pirate ship right outside of the arena. He was at that arena for like a monster truck show with his dad and son, I think, and he saw the ship and he texted whoever saying, I don't care what match I'm in at WrestleMania, I have to jump off this pirate ship. So obviously circumstances changed, they couldn't go to the arena, but they had the WrestleMania sign instead, so he realized that he could jump off of that instead, which was pretty cool, and it made for a great WrestleMania moment for him. So they show him going out with his daughter, and he talks, taking her out for a bike ride and doing this and going to the playground, blah, blah, blah. And he says that he's gotten good at living in the moment. He never was really good at that early on in his life, but he is now. And how the pandemic, obviously it's not a blessing in disguise, but one good part of it, if there really is any good part of the pandemic, for him is that it's allowed him to stay with his family all the time. He hasn't had to travel. He sees his kids every single day. He wakes up and goes to bed in his own bed every single day. And it's been awesome for him. It's a really, really cool experience, and he's enjoyed every moment of it. And he says how crazy it is that these last few months have been unprecedented for everyone. No matter what your situation is, it doesn't even matter. It's been unprecedented for everybody. And he realizes, again, it's not lost on him that this time period that we're living in right now, how insane it is that we're living through 2020, because this is a time period that will be discussed for hundreds of years to come. Is 2020. And thankfully, 2020 is almost over. Not that all our problems will go away on January 1st, but 2020 itself, the stigma surrounding it, will thankfully be over in just a couple more weeks. But anyway, he said, he talked about how he's chosen to opt out of certain shows over the last couple of months because he didn't really feel it was safe, and he's not been shy in talking about that. There's been reports about that. I interviewed him a couple months ago. He mentioned that. You can check out our exclusive interview here on the channel, cheap plug, from back in October. And he said that COVID has affected very heavily the entire family, specifically his wife's side of the family. I think she either had like her grandfather or someone on her side of the family had passed away, maybe more than a couple people. But I know at least one person on her side of the family had passed away because he talked about it on Twitter a number of months ago, which is really unfortunate. So my thoughts and prayers go out to them. But he talks about how, his wife actually encouraged him to go to the shows. When he questioned it, no one really questioned his decision to leave. When he was like, I don't want to go to the show just due to X, Y, and Z, due to the current circumstances, they said, sure, no problem, whatever. His wife actually was the one who encouraged him to go to the shows. And she made the point that, it's obviously, we're not taking this thing lightly, obviously, but we feel like the people need something. And that, it gives people hope and optimism to watch their favorites on TV, including Kevin Owens. And he even said that he didn't know if he would have been able to get through this period in 2020 had WWE shut down for as long as they did. I mean, they didn't shut down, but who knows? Had they shut down, as people were speculating, myself included, Would they have ever reopened? Would they have started doing shows again? Who knows? He doesn't know how he would have gotten through that period. He would have felt like a slug, he said. And he says that he's missed, enjoying that drive to and from the shows, being on the road. And being on the road isn't amazing, obviously, but those, long drives of realizing what went wrong, what I could have done better, what I did do right on the show that I was just on. He misses that part of the traveling. If there's any negative, that would be it. Would be missing that part of it. And missing, being on the road and whatnot. As far as that aspect of it is concerned, what he wants to do at the end of the day is look back on his career and realize not only what he's accomplished, but look back on who he's helped. And he figures that one day when his in-ring days are over, that he'll be behind the scenes. Because he praises everyone behind the scenes. He talks about Pat Patterson. It's a shame that part of that wasn't a bigger part of this documentary, because Pat Patterson, I believe, passed away during this time period. Obviously, he mentions Pat Patterson. But this began on November 27th. I think Pat Patterson passed away in that first Wednesday of December. So he mentions Pat for a little bit, but not in a great detail about how much he meant to him and stuff like that, which would have been nice, but it might not be the place for it, so it is what it is. So anyway, he is concerned about wrestling in a TLC match because it hurts after being in any match, but I don't think he's ever been in a TLC match before, so it's the first of its kind for him to be in one of these matches. They show him getting beat up again on SmackDown by Roman Reigns backstage, and he takes some time for himself afterward to kind of, recollect himself, regather himself, coming off such a brutal attack on the show. And he feels like they have barely scratched the surface with this storyline, and I completely agree. They've been firing on all cylinders. Roman Reigns is at the top of his game right now. He feels like he's matching Roman Reigns. But the rivalry wasn't rushed, but there was only a month between pay-per-views, and he didn't have much time to build up the storyline. So they only had about a month, and they're doing some great work going into the show, which they did. But had given more time, they could have done a lot more. There was so much more that he's wanted to do with this feud. And he might get the chance. If the feud continues going into the Royal Rumble, and maybe it will. I know they're facing off in a steel cage match on SmackDown on Friday, which is pretty cool. Maybe they will have that chance to tell more of the story than what they've told so far. So I think that's pretty cool. And to close out the documentary, he mentions how he never sacrificed who he was upon coming to WWE. And he mentioned how people were asking him, why didn't you lose weight? Why didn't you get in a better shape? Blah, blah, blah. He didn't love Stone Cold Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels because they looked like monsters. And he made it to WWE being against all the odds. People had told him when he got to NXT, despite the fact he was never really made to be in WWE, he got to NXT, and even then he was told, hey, don't get your hopes up for a main roster run. There's a good chance it probably won't happen. And he made it there anyway. He made it to the main roster anyway. And he says now he's at a point where he doesn't have to prove it to himself that he's as good as he says that he is, because he's been told by a lot of talented people that he's doing things right. And that's when the thing ends. I thought that was a really weird note to end on, because it felt like there was more that he either had to say or did say that they cut out, or there was more to cover there. It was a really weird way for the documentary to end. And usually these chronicles go all the way up until the pay-per-view itself. Not like the day of the pay-per-view, but like the SmackDown before the show. But I guess the Chronicle had to come out on the Saturday, so it is what it is. But yeah, this was great, though. I thought this was tremendous. Aside from the abrupt ending, I thought this was a really, really good Chronicle. Clocks in at around 28 minutes, but it goes by like that. Can't snap right now. There you go. It goes by like that. It was a very quick documentary. Great, short and sweet stuff here from Kevin Owens, talking about some very serious topics. Very serious topics, talking about his family and COVID and everything else, the pandemic, 2020. So it's really, really good, talking about the story with Roman Reigns, which has delivered and been the undoubtedly best part of SmackDown for the last month now. And the TLC match, although they don't talk about it here because it came out before the pay-per-view on Sunday, it definitely delivered. And Roman Reigns, spoiler alert, came out on top, still the Universal Champion. So, great stuff here. Really, really enjoy this. Check it out right now on the WWE Network, WWE Chronicle on Kevin Owens. Check out all my other WWE Chronicle reviews right here on WWE Network and Chill in the description box down below in the playlist entitled WWE Chronicle Reviews. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Hit that bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up. We should, fingers crossed, the timing is a bit weird right now. I'm not sure when it's going to be up, but I should have an exclusive interview coming up this week here on the channel, again with Bayley. I did interview her over the summer. The audio of that interview, I don't think we uploaded here to the channel. I didn't start doing that until after the Bayley interview. I'll upload that one at some point, but we're doing another interview with Bayley for Bleacher Report this coming week, and the audio of that should be up by Wednesday, which is really exciting. Right before Christmas, too, so a lot more content to come here on the channel. The Mandalorian Season 2 finale review up right now here on the channel. Check that out as well. But yeah, have a great one, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week and the rest of your holiday season as well. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.